Brit. No one could tame the feral alpha until the rejected Omega came. The night was thick with mist, curling like silver smoke around the trees of the dark forest. Brit. A cold wind whispered secrets, carrying the faint rustle of leaves and the distant howl of wolves. From the shadowed treetops, glowing eyes watched silently, waiting. In the heart of the forest, a figure moved with quiet grace, stepping carefully along the moss-covered ground. It was Lyra, small but determined, her brown cloak wrapped tightly around her shoulders. She had been walking for hours, fleeing the judgment of her pack, who had cast her out for being weak. Lyra's heart thumped, not just from exhaustion, but from the fear that something far darker than the forest itself was hunting her. She had heard stories, whispered among her rejected sisters, of the feral alpha who ruled these lands. A wolf king so powerful and untamed that no one dared approach him. Some said he was cursed, his rage unending, his heart untouched by mercy. Lyra didn't know if the stories were true, but she could feel the heavy weight of eyes upon her. Something in the shadows was moving. Suddenly, the rustling grew louder. A pack of wolves appeared from behind the trees, their teeth bared, eyes glowing with hunger. Tussauds desk. Lyra froze. She had no weapon, no place to run. Her breath caught in her throat as the wolves encircled her, low growls vibrating in the still air. She pressed herself against a tree, trying to make herself small, hoping they would pass her by. Then, from the mist, came a sound that made her blood run cold and warm at the same time. A deep, commanding growl unlike any wolf she had ever heard. It was not quite human, not quite beast, yet it carried authority that made the other wolves hesitate. From the shadows stepped a figure, tall and strong, moving with a strange, dangerous elegance. It was Kalen, the feral alpha. His eyes glowed like amber fire piercing through the mist. His presence was overwhelming, both terrifying and magnetic. The wolves bowed their heads, retreating into the darkness. Lyra could not move. She could only stare as Kalen approached, his gaze fixed upon her. "Why are you here?" His voice was deep, rumbling like thunder, yet strangely curious. I am lost," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to intrude." Kalen tilted his head slightly, studying her. There was a wildness in him, a sharp edge that could cut like steel. Yet there was also something else, something fragile, hidden beneath the rage and the power. For reasons she could not explain, Lyra felt a strange sense of safety. Not trust, not yet, but a thread of something like it. "You are far from home," Kalen said, his eyes narrowing. "This forest is not kind to the weak." Lyra swallowed hard. She was weak, at least in the eyes of her pack. But in her heart she carried a stubborn strength, the same strength that had allowed her to survive being cast out. I can take care of myself," she said quietly, though she knew her words were fragile against his towering presence. Kalen steadied her for a long moment. His expression softened slightly, almost imperceptibly. No one had ever spoken to him like that, not with fear and defiance mixed together. Most would have run, begged, or cried, but Lyra stood her ground, trembling yet unbroken. A sudden noise snapped the moment. From the edge of the clearing, another wolf, a massive black-furred creature, lunged toward Lyra. She screamed, but before the wolf could reach her, Kalen moved faster than thought. In one fluid motion he struck, sending the wolf crashing to the ground. His growl shook the trees. "Stay close," he commanded, his voice sharp, protective. Lyra did as she was told, her heart racing. But every step he took exuded raw power. his presence overwhelming, yet oddly comforting. She could feel his gaze on her, heavy and searching. Kalen moved like a shadow, strong and precise, yet there was an almost untamed grace in his movements. As they walked, Lyra realized that she could hear the subtle rhythm of his heartbeat beneath the surface of his skin, a rhythm wild and uneven, yet steady in its own feral way. She shivered, though not from cold. There was something magnetic about him, something dangerous and yet strangely familiar. After what felt like hours, they reached a clearing where the moonlight broke through the trees. Kalen stopped, turning to face her. "Why do you wander into danger?" he asked, his voice softer now, though still carrying the authority of a king. Lyra hesitated. She wanted to tell him everything about her rejection, her fear, her loneliness, but the words lodged in her throat. Disturbance. Instead, she said simply, "I had no choice. I wanted to find a place where I belonged." Kalen's amber eyes softened, though his jaw remained tense. He took a step closer, the air between them charged with tension and unspoken questions. "Are you ready to face yours?" Lyra looked up at him, her chest tight with fear and something else, something she didn't yet understand. I will try," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Kalen's gaze lingered on her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he spoke. "Then you will stay with me. For your safety. And mine." Breaths. She had not expected this. She had thought he would leave her, or worse. I don't know if I can,"
she admitted, fear and curiosity battling within her.
"You will learn," Kalen said, his voice firm, yet there was a hint of promise in it. "I do not tolerate weakness. But perhaps you are not as weak as you seem." Lyra swallowed hard, unsure whether to be relieved or afraid. There was no turning back now. The forest seemed to hold its breath as if waiting for their next move. Kalen turned, leading her deeper into the mist, his powerful presence a shield against the unseen dangers that lurked in the shadows. As they walked, Lyra stole glances at him. He was unlike any creature she had ever seen, strong, fierce, yet with a strange vulnerability in his eyes. She sensed a story behind that feral exterior, a pain that no one else could understand. And despite her fear, a small spark of something warm began to grow inside her, curiosity, admiration, and even a faint hope. But the night deepened. Shadows stretched like long fingers, and the forest seemed to close in around them. Desperate, every sound, a crack of a branch, a rustle in the leaves, made Lyra's heart race. Kalen moved with ease, as if he belonged to this darkness, yet every now and then he would glance at her, checking that she was still following. Finally, they reached a cave hidden among thick roots and twisted trees. The entrance was guarded by ancient stones, carved with symbols Lyra could not understand.
Kalen stopped at the threshold, turning to her. "Inside, you will be safe, for now."
But know this, survival here requires more than courage. It requires strength of mind and heart.
"Do you have that?" Lyra met his gaze, determination flaring in her chest.
I will try," she repeated, her voice steadier this time.
Desperate. Kalen's expression softened for the briefest moment. Then, without another word, he entered the cave, Lyra following close behind. Inside, the air was cool and damp, the walls lined with shadows. A fire burned dimly in the corner, casting flickering light across the rough stone floor. Lyra took a tentative step forward, her eyes adjusting to the gloom. She felt the weight of Kalen's presence behind her, strong and unyielding, yet strangely protective. Brit, she realized with a mixture of fear and awe that this was only the beginning. Her journey into the world of the feral alpha had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again, Brit. Kalen settled near the fire, his gaze never leaving her. Rest now, he said quietly. Brit, tomorrow you will learn the rules of my world. And perhaps, Brit, you will learn the truth about yourself.
Lyra nodded, exhaustion pulling at her limbs.
But she curled up near the fire, feeling the heat on her face, and listened to the strange, steady rhythm of Kalen's breathing. For the first time in her life, she felt a flicker of hope. Brit, perhaps she had found a place, even if only for now, where she could survive. Outside the cave, the forest whispered, shadows shifting as if alive. The night held secrets, and the Alpha's eyes gleamed with a promise of danger, power, and perhaps something far more dangerous. Something Lyra could not yet name, but would feel in the depths of her heart. Brit. And in that quiet, tense moment, Lyra knew one thing for certain. No one had ever been able to tame Kalen, the feral alpha. But perhaps, just perhaps, she was not like anyone else. The fire flickered, casting long shadows across the walls, and the forest waited, holding its breath for the storm that was about to come. The first light of dawn seeped through the cracks of the cave, pale and fragile against the lingering shadows. Brit. Lyra stirred, blinking at the dim glow of the fire still smoldering in the corner. She was stiff and sore from sleeping on the cold stone floor, but something inside her refused to be afraid. Brit. The night had been quiet, yet the weight of Kalen's presence pressed against her mind like a living thing, powerful and demanding. Kalen sat across from her, his amber eyes reflecting the dying embers. Brit.
He had not slept, she noticed, and there was a tension in his posture, a sharpness in the set of his jaw that made her chest tighten.
Brit. He studied her silently as she stretched, the slightest twitch of a brow acknowledging her movement. Lyra felt a strange combination of fear and fascination. Brit, she had survived the night, yet she could not forget how close she had come to the wild instincts of the Alpha. "Stan!" Kalen said abruptly, his voice breaking the quiet. Brit. It was not a request. It is time you learn the rules of this place. Lyra rose, her legs trembling slightly. Brit. She nodded, though her mind raced with questions. What rules? Brit.
What dangers?
She had already seen enough to know this forest, this world, was unlike anything she had ever known. Brit.
Yet something inside her urged her forward. She could not turn back.
Brit. Kalen led her out of the cave, into the forest now bathed in the soft light of dawn. Mist hung low over the ground, curling around the trees like silver ribbons. Brit. The forest seemed alive, whispering and shifting in ways that made the hair on her arms stand on end. Lyra followed closely, careful not to fall behind. Brit. She noticed that the wolves they had seen the night before were gone, leaving only tracks and distant echoes of howls. You must understand, Kalen began, his voice low, almost reverent in the quiet morning. Brit. This forest is not merely land and trees. It is alive, Brit. It can sense weakness. It can test those who walk its paths. Brit. You are not here by accident, Lyra swallowed. Brit. Her heart thumped nervously. I did not know. Brit. I just wanted to find somewhere safe. Kalen's eyes narrowed. Safety is a concept for the foolish. Brit. Survival is what matters, and survival requires understanding strength, your own, and the strength of those around you. Lyra nodded slowly, realizing that she was about to step into a world where her usual rules, the ones she had learned in her pack, did not apply. She would need courage, wits, and perhaps something she had never dared to recognize, her own hidden power. For hours, Kaelin guided her through the forest. He showed her hidden streams, ancient trees marked with symbols she could not read, and areas where the ground itself seemed to hold a memory of past events. Lyra felt her senses sharpen with every step. She began to notice the faint signs of magic in the air, the way leaves trembled without wind, the faint glow of stones along certain paths, the rustle of branches as if whispering warnings. Do you feel it? Kaelin asked suddenly, stopping near a circle of blackened stones. The energy here is old. Dangerous. It can corrupt a weak mind or strengthen a will that is true.
Do you feel it? Lyra hesitated, then nodded.
Yes, I feel it.
Like it's alive.
Kaelin studied her, his expression unreadable. Good.
That awareness will keep you alive. But awareness alone is not enough. You must learn to act, to stand.
To face fear, not run from it.
They spent the morning in silence, Kaelin teaching her the ways of the forest.
He showed her how to move quietly, how to sense danger, and how to listen to the subtle rhythms of the natural and supernatural world. Lyra was clumsy at first, but with Kaelin's guidance she began to move with a growing confidence. Each step built a fragile connection between them, a tension that neither could ignore. As the sun climbed higher, Kaelin led her to a shallow river.
The water was clear, reflecting the sky like a mirror.
He gestured for her to step in.
You will need to be strong, not just in body, but in mind. The forest tests your will. The water can reveal what you are too afraid to see. Lyra hesitated, staring into the rippling reflection.
In the water, she saw not only her own pale face, but a flicker of something darker, a fear she had carried for years, the weight of rejection, the loneliness of being cast out. She shivered, but Kaelin's presence was steady behind her.
Do not look away, he said quietly. Face it. Know it. Only then can you control it. Taking a deep breath, Lyra stepped into the water. The cold shocked her at first, but she focused, letting the river's flow carry her awareness. She saw herself not as weak, but as someone who had endured and survived. She saw the rage she had buried inside, and the courage that had kept her alive when others had turned away. When she lifted her eyes from the reflection, Kaelin was watching her, his gaze intense, desperate.
You have spirit, he said, a hint of approval in his voice. Few can survive this without fear consuming them.
Few can stand and meet the shadow within themselves. Lyra felt a thrill of pride, but it was quickly followed by unease. Kaelin's eyes were not merely approving. They were searching, probing, as if trying to understand the very essence of her soul. She did not flinch, though a part of her wished she could hide from the intensity of his gaze. They spent the afternoon training in small ways, Kaelin demonstrating control, Lyra learning to move with intention. Though she was still learning, a pattern emerged. Kaelin's power was overwhelming, yet she sensed that he was not invincible. His feral nature was a storm, beautiful and terrifying, but it had cracks, and she had glimpsed them. By evening, Kaelin led her to a hill overlooking the forest. The sky blazed with oranges and purples, the sun dipping below the horizon. The forest stretched endlessly beneath them, a world alive and watching. You have survived the day, Kaelin said. But this is only the beginning. There are forces here that even I do not fully control. You will face them, whether you are ready or not. Lyra felt a chill, Not from the wind, but from the weight of his words.
Forces? She asked. Kalen's eyes darkened.
Brit. Spirits of the forest, rival wolves, remnants of curses older than this kingdom. They will test you, and they will test me. Brit. Gather, can we survive what is coming? Brit. Lyra swallowed hard. The gravity of his words pressed down on her, but she found herself strangely unafraid. Brit. She had been rejected, abandoned, and left alone before. This fear was different. It was not hopeless, Brit. It was a challenge, and she had a strange certainty that she would meet it. The sky darkened, and shadows began to stretch across the forest floor. Brit. Kalen turned to her, his amber eyes glowing in the dim light. Tonight, you will sleep in the outer chamber. Brit. The forest watches all who enter. You must not underestimate it. But Lyra nodded, but she did not move. Her gaze lingered on him. Brit. There was something unspoken between them, a tension that hummed like a low drumbeat. Fear, curiosity, and an unfamiliar desire mingled in her chest. Brit. She realized that Kalen was not merely a guardian or a threat. He was a force, untamed and unpredictable, and she could not look away. Night fell quickly. Brit. Lyra lay on a bed of soft moss in the outer chamber Kalen had prepared. She could hear the distant howl of wolves, the rustling of leaves, and the occasional low growl from the forest itself. Brit. Sleep was difficult, her mind racing with thoughts of Kalen, the forest, and the dangers that awaited. Yet despite the fear, a strange calm settled over her. Brit. She felt alive in a way she had never felt before. A sound stirred her from half-sleep. Brit. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate. She opened her eyes to see Kalen standing at the edge of the chamber, his silhouette outlined by the moonlight. Brit. He watched her quietly, as if reading her thoughts. You are learning quickly, he said, his voice low and steady. Brit. But the forest is not done testing you. Tomorrow, we begin a new challenge. Brit. You will need courage, wit, and strength beyond what you think you possess. Lyra nodded, words failing her. Brit. She felt both fear and anticipation, her heart racing with the unknown. Kalen stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. Brit. No one has ever stayed near me and survived, he said. Few even try. Brit. You are different. Do not mistake that for weakness. Brit. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Lyra felt a spark of something unfamiliar. A bond forming, tenuous and fragile, yet undeniable. Brit. She did not yet understand it, but she knew her life had changed forever. Outside, the forest whispered and shifted. Brit. Somewhere in the darkness, eyes glowed and watched. The night was far from over. The morning mist hung low over the forest, wrapping the trees in a soft silver veil. Lyra stepped out of the outer chamber, her heart pounding. Brit. The night had been restless, her dreams haunted by shadows she could not name. But now, with the first light of dawn, there was a sense of purpose in the air. Brit. Kalen waited for her at the edge of the clearing, his figure as imposing as ever, yet the sharp tension in his stance suggested something deeper, an unreadable worry or anticipation.
Today, Kalen said, his voice low and commanding, we begin your true test.
Brit. The forest has shown you the paths of survival, the hidden dangers, and the whispers of the spirits. But knowledge alone will not protect you. Brit. You must confront fear directly. Only then will you understand what it means to stand beside me.
Brit. Lyra nodded, though unease fluttered in her chest. She did not yet fully understand the magnitude of what lay ahead.
About, Kaelin turned and led her through winding paths, deeper into the forest than she had ever been.
The trees grew taller here, older, their trunks thick with vines and moss.
Brit. The air was heavy, rich with the scent of earth and magic. Even the birds were silent, as if the forest itself awaited some unspoken event. Brit Payne. After a while, they arrived at a clearing dominated by an enormous stone arch. It was covered in runes, faintly glowing with a strange silver light. Brit. Beyond it, a narrow path wound up a steep hill. Kaelin stopped, turning to face her.
Brit. This is the threshold of shadows, he said. Few who pass here do so unscathed.
Brit. The forest will test you, not with weapons, but with what lies within your heart. Fear, doubt, and anger will take shape. Brit. You must resist them, or they will consume you. Lyra swallowed. Brit. Her palms were sweaty, and her legs trembled slightly. Yet beneath the fear, there was determination. Brit. She had been cast out, rejected, and left to face dangers alone before. She could do this. She would do this. Kaelin's gaze softened, though it remained intense.
I will be near, but I will not intervene unless it becomes necessary. This is for you to face.
With a deep breath, Lyra stepped forward. The moment she crossed the arch, a sudden chill wrapped around her. But the air grew thick, heavy with whispers that seemed to echo inside her mind. Shapes moved at the edge of her vision, shadows twisting into forms that reflected her deepest fears. But she stopped, heart hammering. From the darkness emerged a vision of her past, her pack rejecting her, turning their backs, their voices full of scorn. Brit. She could hear the words, sharp as knives, weak, worthless, not fit to survive. Her chest tightened, and tears threatened to spill. But she wanted to run, to escape the memories. But Kaelin's presence anchored her. You are not weak. Kaelin's voice echoed in her mind, though he was not visible. Brit. Stand. Face it.
Brit. You are stronger than you believe. Lyra clenched her fists, summoning the courage she had buried for years.
Brit. She whispered, her voice trembling but firm. The shadows wavered, as if uncertain how to respond. Then the forest shifted again. The ground beneath her feet trembled, and shapes rose from the mist, twisted figures of wolves, enormous and snarling, eyes glowing with malice. But
Lyra's breath caught. She had survived the wolves before, but these were not ordinary creatures. They were born of the forest's magic, illusions that fed on fear.
Brit. Kaelin stepped beside her, his presence radiating strength. Control your fear, he said.
Brit.
Do not let them see you falter. Your mind shapes them.
Brit. You are stronger than these illusions. Lyra took a deep breath, her heart racing. Brit. She focused, centering herself, imagining a shield of light within her chest, her courage forming a barrier against the shadows. The wolves lunged, and she held her ground, desperate. The illusions collided with her will, and slowly they began to retreat, melting into mist. Her chest heaved, but she stood firm, trembling yet unbroken. Pressed. Kaelin's amber eyes gleamed with approval. You are learning, he said. But few can face the threshold and emerge without surrendering to fear. You did not falter, Brit. That is strength.
Lyra felt a small thrill of pride, but it was fleeting.
Brit. She knew this was only the beginning. The forest had more tests, more secrets, and she had only glimpsed the surface. Desperate. As they moved further into the forest, Kaelin guided her to a glade where the air shimmered with silver light. At the center was a stone pedestal, upon which rested an artifact, a crystal, dark and humming with energy. Brit.
Lyra felt a pull toward it, a strange mixture of curiosity and unease.
This is the heart of the forest, Kaelin explained.
Brit, it holds the power that has bound me, the curse that has made me what I am. The forest feeds it, and through it, my rage is amplified. Brit. Few have touched it and lived, for it reveals not only strength but the truth of your soul.
Lyra's fingers itched with the desire to reach out, yet fear held her back.
Brit. What will happen if I touch it? She asked. Kaelin's gaze darkened. Brit.
You will see, and what you see may change you forever.
Brit. Are you ready? Lyra hesitated. Her entire life had been shaped by fear and rejection. Brit. Yet something inside whispered that this was her chance. Not only to prove herself, but to understand Kaelin, the feral alpha, and perhaps even help him. She nodded slowly. Brit. I am ready. With steady hands, she approached the pedestal. The crystal pulsed with a rhythm that seemed to echo her heartbeat. Brit. As she touched it, a wave of energy surged through her, and the forest dissolved into visions. She saw Kaelin as a young alpha, full of potential but trapped by a curse cast by a rival pack centuries ago. Brit. She saw his loneliness, his rage, and the fear that even he could not escape. Tears blurred her vision. Brit. She realized then that Kaelin's feral nature was not born of cruelty, but of pain and isolation. And in that moment she felt an unexpected surge of compassion and connection. Brit. Kaelin, she whispered, her voice trembling. The vision shifted, revealing her own life, the rejection, the loneliness, the moments she had thought she was powerless. But in those moments, she saw flashes of resilience, courage, and quiet strength.
The forest was showing her not only his truth, but hers as well.
Brit. Kaelin appeared beside her, his presence grounding her. What do you see? He asked, his voice low, almost vulnerable. Brit. Lyra turned to him, tears in her eyes. I see, Brit, you.
And I see me.
We are not weak. We are, Brit, survivors. Kaelin's amber eyes softened. Brit. For the first time there was no wildness in them, no feral edge, only a raw, aching humanity. You understand, he murmured. You understand. Brit. Few ever do. Few can see the truth behind the beast and not be consumed by it. Brit. Lyra's hand hovered over the crystal, sensing its energy. Can it be broken? She asked. Brit. Kaelin's jaw tightened. Perhaps. But it will require more than courage. It will require trust. Trust in yourself. And in me. Are you willing to risk that? Lyra hesitated, then nodded. I am willing. For a moment, the forest fell silent. Brit. Then, without warning, a shadow moved at the edge of the glade. A figure emerged, tall and dark, radiating power and malice. Brit.
Lyra's breath caught.
Brit. She recognized the presence immediately. A rival alpha, one whose hatred of Kaelin had lasted centuries, whose magic was as sharp and dangerous as any weapon. Kaelin stepped in front of her, his body tense, every muscle coiled like a spring. Brit. This one has come for you, he said. And, for me. Brit. You must stay behind me, no matter what you feel. Do you understand? Lyra nodded, heart racing. Brit. She had survived fear. She had faced the threshold. But this was different. This was not a test. Bert. This was danger, real and immediate. The rival Alpha stepped closer, eyes glowing with a cruel light. But so, the rejected Omega stands beside the feral Alpha, the figure sneered. Do you think you can survive what is coming? Kalen growled low in his chest, a sound that shook the trees. Brit. His hand brushed against hers briefly, not in gentleness, but as a promise. We will survive, he said. Brit. Together. Lyra's heart pounded. Fear, anticipation, and an unspoken bond with Kalen surged within her. Brit. She had come so far, faced her fears, and touched the heart of the forest. Now she would need every ounce of courage she had to face the darkness that had followed them here. Brit. The wind rose, swirling through the trees, carrying the distant echoes of ancient magic. Shadows lengthened, and the forest seemed to hold its breath. Desperate. Lyra stood beside Kalen, her hands trembling but her resolve firm. Whatever came next, she knew they would face it together. Brit. The forest seemed to hold its breath as the rival Alpha stepped closer, shadows twisting around him like living smoke. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. Brit. She stood beside Kalen, whose presence radiated raw power, yet she could sense the tension in him, the dangerous edge of the feral Alpha, the storm he had struggled to contain for so long. Stay behind me, Kalen said, his voice low and firm. Brit. His amber eyes glowed like fire in the dim light, scanning every movement of their foe. Breath. Lyra nodded, gripping her hands together, not out of fear but to steady her resolve. She had faced the threshold. She had faced illusions of her own fears. And now she would face the danger that had come for them both. Brit. The rival Alpha snarled, his voice a cruel echo in the clearing.
So, the feral Alpha has found an ally, an Omega who dares to stand by him.
Brit. Do you truly think you can survive me? Kalen growled, low and menacing, a sound that seemed to shake the trees themselves. We do not survive by doubting ourselves, he said. Brit. We survive by fighting and standing together. Do not forget that. Lyra drew a deep breath. Brit. She felt the pulse of the forest under her feet, the faint energy still lingering from the heart of the forest she had touched. It thrummed in her chest, a quiet but steady power. Brit. She realized that her courage had grown stronger since that moment, and that her bond with Kalen was no longer just fear or fascination. It was trust, fragile but real. The rival Alpha lunged suddenly, moving faster than the eye could follow. Kalen reacted instantly, his feral instincts rising to meet the threat. He moved like a shadow, blocking the strike and sending a shockwave of force through the ground. But Lyra watched, her pulse racing, as magic and power collided, twisting the air around them. Kalen's strength was immense, but the rival Alpha's power was older, sharper, honed through centuries of dark magic. Brit. The battle was brutal, a clash of energy and fury, each strike shaking the forest and making the ground tremble beneath Lyra's feet. She realized that she could not stand idle any longer. Brit. Drawing on the courage she had learned in the forest, she stepped forward. The magic of the heart of the forest still lingered in her, a quiet light within her chest. Brit. She raised her hands, focusing her energy, and sent a pulse toward the rival Alpha, a force born of her will and determination. Brit. The dark figure faltered for a moment, surprised by the Omega's power. Kalen glanced at her, his expression a mixture of pride and concern. Brit. Careful, he warned, but he did not stop her. He knew that this moment was as much hers as his. Brit. Lyra's pulse quickened, and she poured her focus into the energy, pushing it forward. The rival Alpha recoiled, stumbling back from the force she unleashed. For the first time, Lyra realized that she was not powerless. She was no longer the rejected Omega, the weak one who had been cast out. She was a survivor, and her strength mattered. Kalen roared, taking advantage of the moment, his claws and teeth moving with precision and strength. He struck the rival Alpha, but the shadowy figure did not fall. Instead, he rose again, his eyes glowing with even darker malice.
You are strong together, the rival sneered, but strength alone will not save you.
Desperate. Your bond, it is fragile. It can be broken. Kalen's amber eyes blazed with fury. It cannot, he growled. Not while we stand as one. Lyra felt the warmth of his hand brush hers, a brief but grounding touch. The world seemed to shrink to just the two of them, their hearts beating in unison, their courage merging. They were no longer separate, no longer master and student, Alpha and Omega. They were partners, bound by trust, shared strength, and something deeper that neither fully understood yet. The rival Alpha unleashed another wave of dark energy, the forest around them twisting and groaning under its weight. Lyra stepped forward, calling on the remnants of the heart of the forest she had touched. She focused not on fear but on connection, on the bond she shared with Kalen, on the courage she had discovered within herself. A brilliant light surged from her chest, bright and steady, meeting the rival Alpha's dark magic with a force of its own. Kalen joined her, amplifying the light with his own power. Together, their energy collided with the rival Alpha's, a brilliant clash that lit up the forest in bursts of silver and amber. The shadows writhed and shrieked, but slowly the darkness began to retreat. The rival Alpha roared in fury, staggering back, weakened by the combined strength of Kalen and Lyra. He glared at them, eyes burning with hatred. "This is not over," he hissed. "The curse, the darkness, it will return." Kalen stepped forward, his voice calm but deadly. "Not today," he said, "and not ever if we stand together." With a final surge of power, Kalen and Lyra channeled their combined energy, and the rival Alpha was thrown back into the shadows, disappearing with a scream that echoed through the forest. The air settled, the trees trembling with relief, and the forest exhaled as if freed from a long-held tension. Lyra collapsed to her knees, trembling from exhaustion and the intensity of what had just happened. Kalen knelt beside her, his hand steadying her.
You did well, he said quietly.
Braver than most who have walked these paths, stronger than you realize. Tears filled Lyra's eyes, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of triumph, of relief, and of something she had never thought possible, belonging.
She looked at Kalen, her heart swelling with gratitude and admiration.
We did it, she whispered. Kalen's gaze softened, the wild edge in his eyes fading slightly.
We did, he confirmed, because you did not run.
Because you chose to stand beside me. That is what matters, The forest around them returned to its quiet, alive with subtle whispers, but the danger had passed, for now. Lyra felt the weight of the day pressing down on her, but it was not heavy. It was grounding, a reminder of her own strength, and of the bond she shared with Kalen. As they made their way back to the cave, the sun broke fully over the horizon, bathing the forest in golden light. Lyra walked beside Kalen, no longer feeling small or weak. She had faced illusions, shadows, and real danger. She had discovered her courage, her power, and her ability to trust, not only in herself, but in someone else. You have come far. he said, his voice quieter now, almost tender. But there is more ahead. More challenges, yes, but also more of yourself to discover. And perhaps more of us, Bert. Lyra met his gaze, and for the first time she did not feel fear. She felt understanding, trust, and a quiet joy that had been foreign to her for so long. "I am ready," she said, her voice steady, filled with newfound confidence. Kaelin nodded. Brit, good. Because strength is not just survival. Brit, it is knowing when to fight, when to trust, and when to face what others cannot. You have learned that today, Brit. They settled near the fire, the forest calm around them. For the first time, Lyra felt a sense of peace, a place where she could breathe and belong. Brit. Kaelin watched her, his amber eyes softening as he saw not a weak Omega, but a strong, courageous woman who had faced the darkness and emerged unbroken.
"You have changed me," Kaelin admitted quietly, more to himself than to her.
Brit. Brit. Not after so long, not after so much anger and rage, but you have shown me another way. Brit. Lyra's heart fluttered, a warmth spreading through her chest. She realized that Kaelin, the untamable alpha, the feral king of the forest, was not just a force to be feared. Brit. He was also capable of love, of trust, of transformation. And she had been a part of that change. Brit gasped. The forest around them seemed to recognize it too. The whispers gentler now, the shadows softening, the mist curling like protective hands. Brit. Lyra felt the pulse of the heart of the forest within her chest once more, steady and calm, a reminder of the courage and connection that had carried her through the night. Brit. Kaelin stood, stretching his massive form. "The night is behind us," he said. Brit.
"The dawn is ours, and together."
Brit. "We are stronger than any darkness." Lyra smiled, stepping closer. Brit. "Together," she echoed, feeling the truth of it deep in her soul. The sun climbed higher, casting light on the glade and the forest beyond. Brit. Kaelin and Lyra stood side by side, no longer Alpha and Omega in the old sense, but partners, equal in courage, in strength, and in heart. The shadows of the past lingered, yes, but they no longer controlled them. Brit. And though the forest was vast and full of secrets yet to be discovered, Lyra knew one thing for certain. She belonged here, and she belonged with Kaelin. Brit. The rejected Omega had survived, and in doing so, she had transformed not only herself, but the feral Alpha who had once been untamable. As they walked back through the forest, hand in hand, the wind carried a gentle whisper. Brit. Not a threat, not a warning, but a promise of the future. Whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together. Brit. And for the first time, both Kaelin and Lyra felt the weight of loneliness lift, replaced by a bond forged in courage, trust, and shared strength. The forest glowed in the golden light of dawn, alive and protective. Brit. The heart of the forest pulsed quietly, its power now intertwined with theirs, and in the distance, the shadows of the past seemed less threatening, retreating before the unity of two hearts that had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. Lyra looked up at Kaelin, and he met her gaze with a rare softness, a promise unspoken but understood.
They had survived the trials, faced the curse, and defeated the rival who sought to destroy them.
Brit. And though the world outside the forest would continue to challenge them, for now they had found peace, belonging, and a bond that could not be broken. The sun rose fully, casting long shadows behind them, and the forest whispered a quiet blessing. Brit. Together, Lyra and Kaelin stepped into the light. the untamable Alpha and the once rejected Omega. Forever changed, forever united.